turning on my audio. That's always a good sign. All right, we're good to go. I was going to start this earlier, but my dog he's just being a brat today. It started to get worse and worse as I started speaking into my microphone. As I've done ciphers, I tend to do ciphers every Friday. As I've done them, maybe he thinks I'm crazy. Maybe he thinks, because he's always had a little bit of a separation anxiety, he thinks I'm giving somebody else attention, right? He hates it when I give somebody else attention. So here I am streaming, and when I talk now, he's just being a brat. So he's on timeout right now because earlier today I tried to start the stream, and he wouldn't let me. So okay, I'm going to try to wear him out. I'm going to take it for a walk, and I don't want to establish the behavior of him throwing a tantrum when I start to speak on the mic, because what if I want to do a Zoom call or something? He starts to throw a tantrum. So he's on timeout. So I might need to stop this in a little bit and let him out of timeout, because, incarceration should not be forever. But at any rate, so yesterday I did a stream. It was impromptu. And some of the things I talked about were about mirroring and about blocking. And I talked about specifically about my philosophy of running, and about how Kenneth Walker needs to not bounce the ball. And if he does bounce, it needs to be a damn fucking good bounce, right? And how I believe that a negative running play is the equivalent of a sack. But also keep in mind, I believe a 4-yard rushing play is the equivalent of an explosive rushing play, where most people would probably believe that it would be a 6+ or something like that, right? And I think that a 2 would be a poor running play, 2 less, and a 3 would be a standard running play. Basing this off of the logic of a West Coast, 2 yards equals a 3-step play, 3 yards equals a 5-step play, 4 yards equals a 7-step play. Anything after that is the running back, aka the skill player, makes one guy miss. So there's the ball carrier, right, which is the ball itself has to follow the progression of the play, which is established by the offensive line and the X and sometimes the Y, or the tight end, right? The Y and the potential Z blockers, flankers, and the wideouts, right? That's what they used to be called. And so that you follow the progression of the play. And if you follow the numbers, if you remember, I counted. If you follow the numbers properly, you can set up a situation where your skill player only has to beat one guy. So and look at like Barry Sanders, the guy who's known for beating like 5 guys. Imagine putting him in a situation where all he has to do is beat Michael Crabtree one-on-one. Just imagine, right? So many touchdowns. It'd be unbelievable. All he has to do is make this one guy miss. Just the one guy miss. And we would see it with Marshawn all the time, where it's like, he'd beat one guy, and then the rest of the dog pound would come and he would just drag him, right? But then once we started to get a really good run game going, it was our guys were getting to the second level, Zach Miller and company getting to the second level and just pushing that second level outward before Lynch even got there. And then he would get those like beautiful power running plays, those diagonal or 45. I think he had one in that NFC Championship game against the 49ers, weak side power play. Turns around, grabs his nuts as he slow walks into the touchdown, into the end zone, or maybe that was the Packers game. It was either way. it's just great blocking, right? Ricardo Lockett would be a good blocker in that situation. Oh, that felt good. 1 second, actually. It's getting toasty in here. I like it cold. And so, what would make Lynch so good, I think he said he learned this from Aaron Rodgers at Cal, is he would count, and then he would just follow the play and read, and then count, and then boom, right, go. Just make his move, make the one guy miss. And the run game should be that simple. That's how you get your explosives, right? But as I established yesterday, if you think of the run game in a different light, right? A lot of people, they're focused too much on EPA, and EPA is based off of the statistics of a passing offense. And I can understand why, because it's a completely different goal. The goal is we want to move down the field as aggressively and as fast as possible. But as I said yesterday, if you can run for 3 yards, no matter what, every single time you run a play, you will win every single game. Now that seems impossible. But if everyone kind of does their job, it's not completely impossible. You got to have a creative running game, and you got to be dedicated to it, and you can't just hit the same gap every single time and run out of the same formation, and you can't run out the same hash mark, right? You can't just be hash mark left, run weak every single time, because then you're going to be in a tight spot and you're not going to have any space, right? You got to run smart. But people are going to say, well, they're averaging 3 yards a carry. That's not an explosive run at all. Well, what's 3 times 3? 3, 6, 9. Shit, now you're on 4th and 1. Well, if you know that no matter what, you're going to get 3 yards on that next play, why would you punt? and again, a punt is not a punt. A punt is a label. We call it a punt. A punt is a turnover. A punt is a turnover. Just like a negative running play is a sack. Labels, what we call things are important. When we punt the ball, it's no different than when a quarterback throws a pass 60 yards down and just says, fuck it. It's the same. The only difference is instead of using your palm, you're using your foot. And we're, the other team knows it's happening. So if on 4th down, we're going to get 3 yards. The other team can't even stop us when they come in with 11. Fucking do it. And then march down the field. Because you can just win the game. And I'm oversimplifying it, right? Because the other team has to play defense, has to play football too, right? And so you're not going to get 3 every single play. That would be legendary, right? We see all the time where a team that goes all out, like the 49ers, they still get stuffed at the line of scrimmage because another team is like, yeah, we're going to stop the run this season. This is all we're going to do. We can't stop the pass for shit, but we're going to stop the run. So, I am oversimplifying the concept, but it's got to be a dedication to the ideology of it, is that this is the way we believe we can win games. Because if we can just get 3, no matter what, holy shit, I just got 4. We're in fucking business. Because what's 4 times 3? That's 12. which means that if we're cooking for 4 every single time, oh my God, right? So, you need your guys pumped up at the idea of a 4-yard run, because if you can average 4 yards a carry in a game, no matter what, then you don't even need to worry about 4th down. You're cruising down the field. And so this comes up with the conversation about Kenneth Walker and his desire for explosives. Because, again, we're going back to Lynch first. Remember I said he's reading the field and making one guy miss. So if an offensive line, remember I talked about Spartans yesterday, they make space, they work as a team, they take their shields and they take their spears and shields together and they push, just like an offensive lineman, they push, and then they create a gap so that the spear behind can strike. The spear is the ball carrier, and they want to get to a very specific point so that they can create a hole in the defense or the opposing unit, and then they can push forward so that they can get their footing and keep moving. And as they move forward, opportunities can open up so that they can continue to drive and open up and spread the defense apart. And this is what the tip of the spear, the skill player, the ball carrier, Marshawn Lynch or Kenneth Walker, this is their opportunity to make those big plays. But a spear is length, and the gap creates the opportunity for the spear to get that length. And this is where they need to think about this dedication of 3 yards and a cloud of dust. That spear is already going to get that 3 yards. Guaranteed in this logic, right? Because the offensive line, the shields, have already pushed and created that space for the length of it to already reach it, because the spear is long, and the gap has created it to even have the opportunity to get there. So then it just, after it has reached the striking point, it just needs to get home, right? It needs to find the soft spot where it slides by the armor, where it slides by the defender, right? The linebacker, the safety, or whoever is there in the gap responsibility, and hit home. Slide right by and get an explosive. And Marshawn would do this. CMC did this, does this right now. He's crazy explosive. And this is the purpose of a skill player, is to get the ball and make at least the first guy miss. And this is why Kenneth Walker was drafted. And so what is happening right now is he is getting the ball and he is sliding behind the shields. He's not taking advantage of the gap. The offensive line, the shields, are punching, and they're saying, here's a guy to hit, here's a guy to hit, here's a guy to hit. And Kenneth is saying, because we're seeing it on film, he keeps bouncing. He's saying, well, what if I... and takes that spear and goes behind the back of the blocker and tries to go around. And by doing this, he's taking extra steps whenever he bounces around instead of just hitting the hole. And so he's wasting the length that he has. You know, if the length of the block, right, the gap that he has created is, it will take him 5 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to reach 3 yards. I don't know. I haven't counted it, right? I'm not that guy from the Bulls who watches the circulation of the ball so that he knows, which way it's going to bounce once it hits the rim. But that's kind of what football is, where you know how, I know Kenneth Walker can take this many steps to get through a gap that is completely open so that the linebacker knows I need to move this fast to hit the gap. And Kenneth Walker needs to know when the gap is hit, the Fred Warner is going to hit this gap at this many steps, because that's how fast he reacts to this type of, like, let's say it's an ISO play. He just needs to hit that A gap. So he knows it's H Pro slot ISO. And so he just needs to get behind the fullback and hit that A gap. And so he's meeting Fred Warner in that A gap. And so he knows by watching tape, it's going to take Fred Warner such and such amount of steps, 1, 2, 3, whatever, to reach that gap. And I need to beat him to that gap and then make my move as soon as we meet the hole. Although, and then I also need to read the hole. It's like he's not doing that. He's too busy trying to find the hole, and then because he's not reading it ahead of time, he can't find it. He's bouncing outside, continuously trying to find an opportunity to go boom. And he's not even reading the second level. He's not even reaching the point where he's like, well, Fred Warner is going to be doing this. So in a simple ISO play where he just needs to dive, he suddenly stops because he's like, well, I'm not going to be able to explode because there's that linebacker there. I don't know what to do with this linebacker. Why is he standing there? He's not supposed to be there. It's a dive play, and I need to go boom. So I'm gonna try to kick it over there. No, all you need to do is you need to take yourself, because you're the spear, and you need to just pop that dude. And by popping him, you need to realize I need to drive at him faster than he's driving at me, because I need to knock him backwards. Many times, football is paralleled to boxing, right? Where especially in Tampa 2 situations, where you got the two safeties and they represent the two fists, right, in boxing, and they're up protecting the head, where the head is the goalpost, right? So you want to hit a Hail Mary. Hail Mary is the touchdown, right? So you want to keep your two fists up, your two safeties in Tampa 2, protect, the goal, make sure that they don't score any explosives and whack you on the side, right, and moss you. So you want to get those safeties down. Why did I bring that up? Why did I give myself a concussion? Why did I bring that up? What were we talking about? It was important, I swear. I was rolling. But because if you can fuck it. Oh, if you're running that jab, here we go. Boxing. ISO. Kenneth Walker. I got it all together now. Thank you for bearing with me. If you're running, instead of the spear, let's think about it as boxing. If you're doing a jab, right, you're trying to keep everything tight, and Kenneth Walker is your fist. He's your fist, right? And he represents the jab, the inside body shots. Everyone's like, why do you compare running backs to body shots? Well, it's because you want, in Tampa 2 situations, when you're comparing it to Tampa 2 situations, the belly is exposed, and you have like your, you have like your elbows, and you can kind of turn and stuff, and you can kind of take it, but you don't have the safeties down, right, where you're blocking with one hand, and the other hand is down below, kind of sparring it. You want to try to force one of those hands down, or ideally, if you can really get him hurting, both of those hands down. And so if he's doing an ISO and he's not hitting that ISO as hard as he can because he's too focused on trying to hit in an explosive. Those body shots are just like little soft jabs. Like he's just doing the play. And so his goal is to hit the 3-yard mark as fast and as physical as he can so that he can reach the 4-yard mark as fast and as physical as he can, because that's the explosive mark. And so if he's thinking an explosive mark is, I'm going to hit a 10-yard rush, he'll reach that accidentally. He'll reach that by having the opportunity of, I just hit this 3 to 4 yard mark so aggressively that Fred Warner or whoever, probably not Fred Warner, he's too good, right? But some other linebacker or safety who's not fucking prepared for how athletic I am, Kenneth Walker being, I'm going to hit this gap so aggressive and fast that, and I'm going to know how fast they're going to reach that gap because of how many steps I know they're capable of, that I'm going to then make my move, and I'm going to turn this already explosive play, which is because again, if we hit 3 to 4 yards every play, no matter what, we're going to win any game. We're then going to kick their asses. We're going to then explode all over the place because all I have to do is beat this one guy after I've already secured the play. The play's taken care of. Now I could just have fun because he wants to have fun out there. That's part of the reason why he's bouncing. He just wants to have fun. And I can show you where you're like, well, why can't he just bounce? If he's so good at bouncing and having explosives and he can beat the first guy, then why do all the steps even matter? Or you're talking about, well, you're wasting steps. If it takes this dude like such and such amount of steps to go from the middle linebacker position all the way to the outside, if he decides to cut it outside, but Kenneth is so fast and he can make the first guy miss, then he'll just make the guy miss outside. Why does it even matter? Well, thank you to Brendon Nelson, and then his reference, who I don't have off the top of my head, for giving me data. I'm so excited. So I have the references all below. So I highly recommend that you subscribe to Brendon Nelson's Seahawks channel. He does long streams like every day. And then he does something with Brendon as well. Hawk Talk? For some reason, I don't remember. That's eluding me. I'm tired, man. But yeah, references in the channel. I'll reference my references as I go. I got some stuff I want to get off my chest. But here, let me pull up some of the stuff. His references were brought up from a guy on Twitter, or X if you want. His name is Arjun Menon. Is it Anyways, yeah. So that's what's going on with the run game, right? And again, what I've been talking about with just the philosophy of how we're supposed to approach running. Imagine a linebacker who decided, I'm not going to hit this gap. I'm gonna try to bounce it. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna bounce it. I know that that this is where the halfback is going. I'm just gonna bounce it. No. Do your job. You see the halfback is collapsing into the gap. Collapse into the gap. The halfback sees that the gap is available and that the middle linebacker is in position for the halfback to make a play. Make the play. Don't try to make a play that you imagine in your head. Make the play that is on paper. Sean Alexander will make the play that's on paper behind a great offensive line, make a guy miss, and then make the play that he's been, metamorphosing or whatever the hell that word is that's eluding me, in his head since he was a child. If Kenneth Walker wants that, he can do it by making the play that's on paper and then making a guy miss and then being awesome. You could be awesome by doing the play on paper. We see CMC doing it right now. He runs the play beautifully, and then he can be explosive. But you got to be explosive from the release. You can't just decide to be explosive later by figuring it out. There is a time and a place to like tiptoe and read, right? But and that comes with experience. But there also is we need to poof, and we need to strike, like right now. And if you're going up against a Ravens defense that's really good, they are going to pop you over and over and over, especially with the blitz. And especially with their gap control. If you can't attack the gap the proper way, if you can't even get 2 yards an attempt this game or 3 yards an attempt because you're too busy juggling in the background and Charbonnet comes in, he might start to get more reps than you. Just not because you're not as valuable, but because of situations. He might end up getting more situational football snaps than you because you keep putting the Seahawks in bad situations. And this brings up now how to address the balance of having so much talent in the backfield and how to maybe utilize the different skill sets. And also the advancement in the offensive line and offensive backfield that I think needs to be discussed more and is also controversial. And I know people hate it. So here's the thing. We need to talk about rotating offensive linemen. We already rotate corners more than we used to. I'm not talking rotate everybody. People say, well, yeah, corners, they play 100% of the snaps. Well, safeties do. Safeties do. Like the quarterback, as I've described, the free safety is like the quarterback. But also, nickels come off the field and corners sometimes get rest. But if they're really good, they stay on the field, right? But when you look at like defensive linemen, they're constantly rotating and they're constantly blitzing. And also a lot of the former logic of how football used to be was the rule of 50. the Lombardi, where we're going to, 25 passing plays, 25 running plays. We're going to keep it perfectly balanced, the rule of 50. And it keeps your team fresh. Nobody's going to get overworked. Game's over. Well, that's gone to the wayside. Now we see teams where they're like, yeah, we played like 70 plays on defense. That team's crazy. They just threw so many plays at us, and we just kept going. Run, as much offense as they possibly could. And what probably kind of happens is the offense's linemen start to kind of break and wear down, and people are like, why is this offense that used to be so good suddenly so stagnant? Why don't they have more offensive linemen to protect their quarterbacks? And why, what's going on? And why don't they have more depth? Well, part of it is because in my opinion, if you have a player who's only really getting reps and scouts, the scouting part of the week, where they are on the practice squad and they're playing with the practice squad team and their second team, and they're trying to gauge and pretend to be in this case, the Ravens against us. They're not really getting real in-game reps, and sometimes for years. And I mean, you get guys like Posick, who spent time with Lane Johnson and company during the Offensive Linemen Masters Academy or whatever that was called. And so they'll get some off-season reps, but it's really hard to get in-game reps as an offensive lineman because teams are so afraid of starting guys because they're like, well, this guy's going to be like a spinning door. Well, a lot of times you get guys that are spinning doors because they haven't touched anybody in forever. And that's the most physical position in the game. It's more physical than defensive linemen. You have to deal with a car crash coming at you. And it's not just, well, yeah, one person is coming and trying to hit you. Many times teams are like, the plays are literally called overloads. We're going to try to hit you with like 3 guys. Good luck. We're going to try to overload you with as much human mass as you can possibly stand. And it's underappreciated that these human beings have to be like 290 to 325 pounds and be able to handle all that. And their joints have to be able to not only handle the physical stress of maintaining their physical weight, but also to block all that, and not anymore for 50 snaps a game every week, but for like 70, not including the plays that are now being flagged and taken off and all of that other stuff. And the athletic specimens coming at them are so aggressive. The Myles Garretts and the Fred Warners and all of just the smashing that's going against them, just so aggressive, right? So you're telling me those guys don't deserve any reps for years, and then as soon as one of the starters goes down, they're expected to go in and be perfect? Now we got to replace this guy. Well, shit, we'll just spend a draft pick. Those dudes deserve chances to have reps. Not because they deserve opportunities to get better, but because, goodness, you want to make your team successful. On the defensive lineman, you rotate all the time, and you want to create synergy. One of the biggest arguments against offensive linemen not rotating is because, well, it breaks the chemistry of how the offensive lineman structures. And I agree. Because if you have an offensive lineman who comes in and he's never blocked next to the guy next to him, then they don't know how to, body language-wise, communicate during a play. So you should have those guys rotating so that week whatever against the 49ers during a super important game, if Joey Bosa happens to trip and cross his knee, and suddenly somebody, Forsyth has to slide over and Peters has to come into right tackle, Thank goodness Bradford and Peters have played together. Instead of, well, Peters has just come out on the bench and he hasn't played in forever, so we don't know how our 41-year-old tackle is going to play next to this rookie. Or Haynes, who always gets hurt all the time, constantly. So thank goodness that we have been rotating Peters and Forsyth and that Haynes and Bradford have been rotating on that right side. Where the right side, which is the most physical side of the offensive linemen, it's the side that offenses run the ball. It's the strong side. They always get hurt. Constantly. And since those guys are rotating, let's say Lucas does come back in time for the playoffs. Great. Now we have all these guys that can constantly rotate. And here's an even more underrated thing. Packages. By having all these guys that now are familiar with each other, you now expand your playbook because you have different body types. Peters and Bradford are built different than Haynes and Forsyth, which means Haynes can run a pull differently than Bradford. And Forsyth has a longer reach than Peters, but Peters has more experience at certain plays. So you can use Forsyth for more athletic type of plays because he doesn't have the same wear and tear. But you can use for Peters for plays that require a little bit more finesse because he has the experience. And so as you use these players, they start to communicate. An offensive line is kind of like a gang. It's kind of like a tribe. And the way I see it is you need to have 8 starters. And then you need to have 2 understudies. You have a couple of the elders, right? You do have the Jason Peters. You do have, like, in this case, I would say, well, you would want another, but you would, the Brown, right? Where we got Brown at center. You got these guys that have been around in the league for a while, and they can start, and they can speak the language on the offensive line during the play, something that the coaches can't do. And so if Bradford is there, and it's the NFL, he's going to see shit he's never seen before. And during like the 25-second, 35-second build-up before a play starts, you want Brown or you want Peters to point to Bradford and be like, hey, look at this dude. You see what he's doing? Man, I've never seen that before. I know. I've been here a long time, young pup. Get ready for this. He's going to move over. And then because it was never on tape before, or even in the tape room, right? They're going to be like, yo, look at this on tape, right? Just having those guys in the room, Peters isn't even starting, but just having him on the room has probably made Bradford a better player, right? So you need at least 2 elders in this room of 8. You need the understudy, which is Bradford, right? You need an understudy. You need another understudy. And then you need the other pack of dogs, the cross, the Lucas. Because if a Lucas goes down, if Haynes goes down, you need those understudies ready to go. You need those elders who can step in and be like, I know how to do this, right? And I can teach the guys who are probably more athletic to me ready to go. You need the Forsyths that are there, but you also need to be able, the next draft, to bring in these guys who are like, okay, here's the room, and the room is owned by the offensive linemen. Remember how the Legion of Boom was like, no, this is a pack of brothers. Do you have the balls to enter this room? That's how an offensive line needs to be. You need to have the 8 and then the 2, and then who can survive in this pack, this room? That needs to be the most vicious room in the football locker room. And a lot of times it feels like we kind of hang out, and it's because these offensive linemen rotate so much. roster in and out cap wise because they're not invested in. It's like they're constantly being replaced. Except on like the Eagles, where they have Lane Johnson and then they had Jason Peters and then they got Kelsey. They have like this unit, right? And the same with the Cowboys, or they had Frederick for a long time and Zach Martin and Smith and all these great players, and it's just like an absolute fucking unit. And you can tell that like it's a cult. That offensive line unit is an absolute cult. And if you want to survive in there, you got to be an absolute dog. You have to be an absolute badass to survive in that room. And that's what the Seahawks culture needs to be, is you need to have 8 starters and they need to be able to rotate in and out because they're all good. And they're like, you're not even allowed to be on this is the offensive lineman speaking. You're not even allowed to be on our team unless we say so. And we're going to coach you up to make sure that you belong. Because if I get hurt, because offensive linemen get hurt, when I come back in a couple weeks, we better still be good, right? We better, because this is a family, right? This is a fucking group here. And let me explain my philosophy about how this came to be. And I'm not happy with it, but it's effective. Are any of you familiar with Boudica? I love Boudica. Let me give a good description of the beautiful Boudica. Here. Boudica was a queen of an ancient Celtic Iceni tribe who led a failed uprising against the conquering forces of the Roman Empire in AD 60 and 61. She's a bit of a hero or legend. So kind of at the time, the Roman Empire was conquering the islands, and they conquered most of it, enslaving, using the women for propagating, destroying our culture, destroying our language. Whenever the men were of age, they were immediately enlisted into the Roman army. It was awful. But there's a specific tribe, the Icenians, that had kind of worked a truce. They were a wealthy tribe, and so they would pay treaties to the Roman Empire. The king would. And when the king passed, as part of his will, the tribe and the land was supposed to be left to the daughters. One of them was Boudica. And the Roman Empire was like, fuck that. And came in, took over the land, enslaved everything, burnt everything. It was awful. So Boudica decided, in her rage, for various reasons that I won't get into, to start a rebellion and an uprising after basically all of the islands had been conquered. So it was a ballsy move, right? But by doing it, there was enough tribes to the south of her that were like, fuck yeah, we agree. And so it caught the Roman Empire off guard. And what specifically caught them off guard was the rage and the suddenness. She did the Blitzkrieg, the German Blitzkrieg, before the Blitzkrieg. Her whole thing was, we got a bunch of really pissed off, settlers and tribes and farmers and survivors, and we got way more of them than your armies. And so we're just gonna and just rush you. Does that sound familiar? Sound a bit like football with the blitz. You got 5 blockers. We're just gonna send 7 at them, and we're gonna get to your quarterback. We're gonna get home. And so what they would do is they would go to a city that was conquered and occupied by the Romans, and then they would just come in, and it would completely catch the guards off guard, and then they would just destroy everything, like the Romans did to them. Good justice. And then everybody who was enslaved there, they would free, and then they would join this big pack, and now suddenly the pack was even larger, and then they would move on to the next area. There was a Roman army that was snaking to kind of stop them, but it was along a single trail, so they were all skinny, and the way that Boudica and the group stopped them was that they just came and washed over them. And because they were all single line, like the offensive line, right, the 5 across, because they were all single line, they were able to just wash over them. And they didn't have enough depth to protect. They didn't have enough units behind. And so everybody was just slaughtered, this Roman army. Up north, there was some, I'm going to say general. That is not what he was. That was leading a force that was hunting our shamans and wiping out some of the last remnants of our religious culture. And he heard news of this uprising, and it was like, months later or something like that. He's like, oh shit. So I got to go down south. Goes down south to Boudica, and he realizes they outnumber us like 100 to 1, because he has saved and enlisted so many slaves and so many of these farmers and indentured servants and stuff who are like, we're going to take back our homeland. Fuck yeah, right? And for good reason. And they keep succeeding. They have not lost a battle yet because they keep overwhelming these Roman forces. And so this soldier who's leading this armed group has a strategy of how to handle a large blitzing force of overwhelming number. This is related to football, and I would like to share with you exactly what it looks like. of we want our 5 best guys there, but it's old logic. It's logic of, well, we're only playing 50 snaps this game, and our offensive linemen kind of suck. Our backups kind of suck. Well, our backups suck when you're paying for a quarterback like Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes, when you're paying them top dollar quarterback prices. Our team isn't built that way. Our team is built where the quarterback's cap money is so small in comparison to the rest of the roster, because the NFL cap space is huge, that you can now build a roster that you can afford to have 8 offensive linemen that are starter caliber. I'm not saying that they're going to be all pros. You can have all pro starters on this line, but you still need quality backup starters. You can have a quality backup quarterback who can go and win you games. McCoy. Geno Smith proved to be a quality starter. I'm not saying, hey, we want to back up like Jason Peters, who's going to start every single game because he's a quality starter. So, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we have the 5 and then 3 others underneath are starter caliber who are going to get snaps every single game. And not as the 6 offensive linemen taking the tight end space. He's going to rotate in because we're playing H Pro, and I want that extra 10 pounds, or I want him specifically because he's able to pull better, and I want that on tape that he can pull so that the defense has to adjust to him pulling. And then I want, hey, he can play better on a near side, so let's bring him in because he plays better left guard near side than Lewis does. So let's do that because he plays better near side. Let's allow our offensive linemen to expand our offense and do more than we're just going to stand here and let this defense attack us over and over and over again while we uncreatively use the same plays over and over again, but let the tight ends and the wide receivers and stuff be creative. Let the offensive line finally grow. It's been since the zone defense, since the zone blocking scheme was developed, by the Broncos, that we've really seen expansion in the philosophy of how an offensive line should function. It's time. There's so much cap space. There's so much different weight classes of how offensive linemen can eat and how agile they are, how they're built. There's so much more how an offense can function as far as bunch formations and what an offensive line is capable of. It's time. Expand their roles, expand how they function and rotate. Defensive line, it used to be heresy, the idea that a defensive line would rotate. Offensive line can rotate too. And by doing so, it makes them smarter, it makes them better, and when an injury happens down the road, which is going to happen, Joe Thomas was a freak of nature. An offensive lineman is 100% going to get injured and 100% going to miss a game. Period. Bet on it. If it doesn't happen, congratulations. But you need to bet that it's going to happen. So have a starter ready to go. Don't bet on, well, we got Joey Hunt. so hopefully we don't have to start him. Don't bet on that. Have a starter ready to go. So that when you attack defenses, you can do it in the most creative, abrasive, and virulent way possible. It's time. I feel deeply about this. How long have I been going here? About an hour. I appreciate you guys listening to me as I get on that. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to chat about. I wanted to try to keep that to about an hour. Yeah, that's it. I guess you can like and subscribe if you want. Definitely, again, subscribe to Brendon's channel. And I have all the references to everything and the links in the description below. If you would like, you can follow me on the ats. Otherwise, we have that Ravens game tomorrow. That's so goddamn excited. So, go Seahawks, and I'll catch you guys around.